Meeting of Gaston County Board of Education. I am Jeff Ramsey, member at large and chairman of the board. At this time, I would like to ask other members to introduce themselves. Mr. Dedman?
Lee Dedman, Gastonia Township.
Justin Davis, South Point Township.
Steve Hall, Dallas Township.
Robbie Lovelock, Cherryville Township. Dot Guthrie, Gastonia Township.
Dot Cherry, at-large member.
Kevin Collier, Riverbend Township.
Brent Moore, Crowded Mountain Township.
Thank you. On behalf of the board, I would like to welcome everyone to our meeting this afternoon and thank you for your interest in Gaston County School. We look forward to a productive and informative meeting. Our first order of business is to have our prayer and pledge of allegiance, and I would like to ask Dr. Booker to lead us in invocation and the pledge. Dr. Booker?
Thank you. Members of the board, before we begin our invocation this evening, I'd like to ask everyone to join me in a moment of silence as we honor the life and legacy of Dr. Zane Ergel, who recently passed away. Dr. Ergel served as the second superintendent of Gaston County Schools shortly after the unification in 1968 of the school district. In addition to his time here in 1970s with Gaston County, Dr. Ergel was superintendent of schools in Winston-Salem as well as Danville, Virginia. After serving 31 years in public education, he went on to be the president of Pfeiffer University until his retirement in 1998. So I think it's fitting that we pause and remember Dr. Ergel for all of his service to public education. So please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Join me in prayer, please. Loving and gracious God, you are indeed the giver of all good gifts, and we thank you today for the life of Zane Ergel. We thank you for his years of public service and contributions to our community. Be with his family, friends, and colleagues as they mourn his passing. We ask that you bless all of our staff members, our teaching faculty, and all the support members as they serve you in the service of our students. Father God, as we meet tonight, we seek your wisdom, guidance, courage, and strength. Be with us in our deliberations and help us to be wise in the decisions we make for the good of all those who have placed their trust and confidence in the leadership of the Board of Education. Give us insight to lead with integrity, Lord, that our decisions may reflect what is right and good and guard us from any blind self-interest. Lord, we ask that you grant us the humility to always seek your will in all that we do and say. May all glory be to you. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our next order of business is to adopt the agenda. You have the proposed agenda in front of you. Do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda?
Second.
Mr. Dedman, I have a motion, and second by Mr. Davis. Any discussion? All in favor? And that's unanimous. Our next order of business is to hear the good news happening in Gaston County School. Dr. Booker, can you share the good news with us?
Yes, sir. We have several items of good news to share. First, I had the pleasure on Veterans Day, which again, it's always fitting to stop and remember our veterans and all that they have done. It was a great weekend of watching college athletics recognize our veterans. And on Veterans Day, there was a ceremony at Gaston College. In addition to that, Duke Energy Foundation presented grants. And you see here a picture of all the grant recipients. And Gaston County Schools received a $20,000 grant. And it's for us to utilize as we continue our STEM growth in our school system, which you all remember stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. The additional grant recipients were the Catawba Riverkeeper Foundation, Gaston College, the Gaston Community Foundation, TechWorks, and the Shield Museum. All combined, $200,000 was given by Duke Energy to the Gaston community, and Dr. Eagle was there to recognize the total contribution to our community. This is just another example of Duke Energy's ongoing partnership with the school district. It was an honor to represent the board at that meeting. This before you is our 4 students who were recognized and chosen for the North Carolina High School Honors Course. Aaron Watson of Forest View High School, Isaac Lundery of Ashbrook High School, Nate Kong, and Tristan Najera of Stuart W. Kramer High School were selected for what is considered to be the most prestigious choral performing group in the state of North Carolina. This performance was held during the North Carolina Music Educators Convention in Winston-Salem, and we are honored that we had 4 students be a part of that presentation. Next, I wanted to recognize Sydney Hillman of Lowell Elementary School. She is the Gaston County nominee for the North Carolina Beginning Teacher of the Year Award. It's presented by the North Carolina Center for the Advancement of Teaching. She is one of 27 finalists across the state of North Carolina, and she will get to participate in additional professional development, which is a part of the week-long celebration that leads up to the announcement of the winner. I had the privilege of recognizing Ms. Hillman at the school with this first phase of the award, and we look forward to her competition at the state level. She is a dynamic young lady, and we appreciate her being in our district. Next, we wanted to recognize Stuart W. Kramer High School student Zach Willer, who won the 3A individual state championship in cross country. It's an amazing accomplishment for Zachary. And there's a lot of winning that went on in this story. Zach has a twin brother named Nicholas, and he finished right behind him in second place. So the Willer family has the top 2 cross-country runners in the state in 3A. So we congratulate both of them on their outstanding performance. Recently, we were awarded $2,000 by the Gaston Community Foundation to be used by our social workers to support students during difficult situations. You all know our social workers do incredible work that often goes unseen because they like to be anonymous as they do the work. And it's just great to have the Community Foundation recognize the hardships that they work with and to give them some funds to meet those needs. So we appreciate the Community Foundation and all the work that our social workers do. Hopefully you've seen the change to our Do the Right Thing recognition process. The monthly winners are still nominated by the school. They're featured in the Gazette on the second Friday of the month, but the ad has a lot more to it on the full page, and so we're excited to recognize this month Sophia Crane of Cherryville Elementary, Austin Avilas of Gaston Virtual Academy, Teresa Cooper of Holbrook Middle School, and Maya Boometer of Stuart W. Kramer High School. The program recognizes them for doing the right thing where they exhibit character traits such as responsibility, generosity, respect, and cooperation. We plan to have, rather than a monthly recognition, in a small way, to have a large ceremony in the spring where all winners will be present, and we'll invite all of the board members to attend. For our last good news item, this is really a great news item. I want you to see how long Francina Burris has served as a bus driver, 40 years. And she is definitely the best news we could give you tonight. It's interesting, if you go to our website and read the article that talks about her service, she said she's been motivated to stay behind the wheel because students are counting on her. Conservatively, is estimated she has transported more than 100,000 folks in her career, if you think about that. So it's a neat thing for her to have done this, and we just want to thank her for her service and all that she's done to support our students. Mr. Chairman, that's our good news for the night.
Thank you, Mr. Booker, or Dr. Booker, excuse me. The next item on the agenda allows the opportunity for public expressions. This time when the board will hear comments from citizens about the matter of public concerns related to the school system. We do have several individuals who have signed up prior to the beginning of the meeting. Our board policy sets aside the first 30 minutes of our regular monthly meeting for citizens to address the board. Do I hear a motion to extend that period for 30 minutes to 60 minutes? Ms. Cherry, motion on the floor, second by Mr. Collier. All in favor? That's unanimous. At the conclusion of the 60 minutes, we will have a hard stop. Anyone not heard tonight will be asked to sign up for the next regular meeting. We want to hear tonight from many as we can. So if the speakers will keep this in mind as we hear from each other, we will limit your time to 3 minutes. Our clerk will be our timekeeper. Before we hear from the public, let me outline the rules of procedures. For 1 hour, citizens wishing to make comments and have completed a request to speak form prior to the beginning of the meeting will recognized by the chair and then request to step to the microphone and make their comments. Citizens that will state their name and address for the record. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Members of the board do not respond to public expression during the public comment period. Public expressions does not allow for comments or confidential or personnel matters. Speakers who wish to give materials to the board will hand them to our clerk. The chair shall rule all points of order during public expression. So our first speaker tonight is Linda McDuffie, excuse me. She's not here. Okay. Jessica Sawyer.
Months to require masks. I understand that this is a complex and divisive issue and that despite personal opinions, those voting in favor are taking the pragmatic approach that a mask mandate is the best way to keep our kids in school. To that, I'm appreciative. I am the mother of a 1st and 5th grade students. There are some positive trends in COVID numbers since the summer surge, and the vaccine is just now available for elementary age students. I ask that we remain vigilant as children get the vaccine and as we approach the winter months. The arguments for those opposed to mask mandates are easily challenged, and I'll take some of the more common in turn. First, some will argue that masks do not work, even reading disclaimers on boxes. There is no panacea, masks included, but the science is clear that there are several ways to reduce the spread of COVID, with masks being an important variable. So just like other safety precautions, masks reduce the spread and are important even if they're not 100% effective. Second, many argue that parents should decide if children wear masks and that the school board cannot dictate what families do. I refer these individuals to the 24-page Gaston County Schools Code of Conduct that we've all received. This includes numerous rules and regulations which are in place to help schools run effectively and to keep children and staff safe. It would actually be highly unorthodox if it was solely up to families and children to decide how they behave at school. This seems to be especially true during a pandemic. Similar to this, people say that they do not co-parent with the government, yet they are sending their children to public schools, which is a government entity, funded by taxes submitted to the government, staffed by government employees. We elect government officials, including school board members, which then gives them the power to make decisions on behalf of their constituents. We may not like some of those decisions, but this is how our democracy works. I've also heard the argument that children are unable to learn while wearing masks. There is no research to suggest this, but there is research that shows in-school learning is significantly more effective than virtual learning, especially for disadvantaged students. There are also several adverse effects to children's mental health when they are not in school. Although not ideal, mask mandates keep schools open and help students stay in an environment that fosters learning and more typical social emotional development. Finally, many argue that it is an infringement on their rights to be required to wear a mask. We as a society are not allowed to do whatever we want, and there are personal responsibilities that come with being a citizen. If this were not the case, one's personal liberty would infringe on others. This is especially true discussing an infectious disease. An individualistic approach does not work. Infections literally come from interactions. So what we choose impacts those around us. And ultimately, if masks are optional, the choice of some would nullify others. My son does not understand why people fight wearing masks. I explain that every single one of us here wants what's best for them. I see them go to school each day without fighting, without adversary, and I would hope that we could do the same. Our children are watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Monica Powell Cubitt. Jasmine Clarkson.
My name is Jasmine Clarkson. My address is on the form. Members of the school board, I speak here today as a Gaston County resident. I live right next to South Point, and I have seen what happens at games. For as long as this school has been founded, South Point administration has permitted the mocking and misuse of Indigenous culture. I can only imagine what it must feel like to be a young Indigenous student watching their peers mock the core of their identity. But you have the opportunity to empathize. You can end this. You have heard testimonies from countless Indigenous activists, tribal leaders, and former South Point students. Yet there seems to be a stony silence coming from you all. No matter how many times speakers reference the barrage of racial stereotypes and harassment that comes from this mascot, the Gaston County School Board gives no response. South Point, and Gaston County as a whole, has become infamous for its notorious mascot. The responses have been attempts to limit how the Retire the Red Raider Forum can express itself. It seems the administration would rather pretend the issue does not exist. Is apathy truly the best response a government can give to its people? Some say the mascot is celebrating Indigenous culture. That is a blatant and lazy lie, if perpetuating the myth that Indigenous tribes were raiders when they laid claim to the land for thousands of years before European colonialism is celebration, then maybe celebration isn't all that it's put out to be. Members of the school board, now is the time to make education a priority. A school that allows non-native students to internalize harmful messages produces stunted adults. A school should not force native students to undergo 4 years of harassment. It is time to stop failing our students. It is time to acknowledge history. I urge you to vote, and I urge you to remove the Red Raider mascot. Thank you.
Thank you. Ava Clarkson.
Hi, my name is Ava Clarkson. My address is on the form. This month is Native American Heritage Month. We have many speakers with us here today to try and convince you to end this once and for all and take action to change the Red Raider mascot at South Point High School. I understand that the position you are in is very complicated, but that is no excuse. As someone in power, it should be a priority to make sure that you aren't complicit in the injustice this mascot is causing. How does it make sense that after a year and a half, you guys haven't done anything about this? Ask yourself, what is holding you back? Political controversy? Ridding South Point of this mascot may not be the most people-pleasing decision, but I promise you that it's the right thing to do. I have faith that you understand why this is the right thing, but I believe that you may be held back by fear. After we keep coming back over and over and over again, you guys have stayed silent and complicit in what is happening to Native students at South Point High School. This is 100% not okay. Native students deserve better. Our community needs leaders who aren't influenced by political controversy. What does it say about Belmont that our leaders have heard firsthand the pain that this mascot is causing and no action has been taken? We come here with facts, statistics, personal stories, Indigenous tribal leaders, and we've quite literally tried everything. Please say something, do something. We are literally begging you to just give us answers, closure, anything. We aren't giving up on this issue, ever, even if it means this group will last decades. Giving up isn't on our agenda, and it never will be. I look at my close friends who attend South Point High School with so much worry that this mascot is going to affect the way they see Indigenous communities. I can spend this speech reading out loud statistics you have already heard, but I would rather give them to you on paper, so you can read the facts right in front of you, literally.
Good evening, esteemed school board members. My name is Jasmine Clarkson. My address is on the form. I'm a proud member of the Belmont community and a proud public school teacher with children that have attended or now attend Gaston County schools. When we moved to Belmont 15 years ago from Charlotte, we fell in love with it. There were lots of trees, not much traffic. It's very walkable, cute little shops, old general store, community full of sentimentality. and tradition. In a lot of ways, it reminded us of Mayberry, especially with all of the welcoming neighbors who sit on their front porch and wave as you go by. As you know, there has been a lot of change over these last 15 years. Belmont now has a Walmart, 2 Starbucks, 2 Chick-fil-A's, more hotels, condominiums, new housing communities, actual daily traffic, and a lot fewer trees. But the sentimentality of the people has remained intact. Why else would the Jonas family want to have their family restaurant located here instead of Vegas or New York? Because they love this town as much as we all do. Belmont is quickly becoming the jewel in the Queen City region's crown. It's a magnet for people seeking fine dining, fun, employment, and good education. As much as I love this area with all my heart, there's always been one thing that has bothered me. And that's just driving past the Red Raider red face logo on South Point Road. This image has never sat right with me because it just doesn't match the goodness of the people that are here. It is a haunting reminder of a time when America was fully embroiled in racism and harkens back to the 1950s America when our schools, our buses, water fountains were divided and not allowed for certain races. I know that Belmont doesn't want to be labeled as a racist city by others who move here or visit. In order for Belmont to be considered as a true 21st century that welcomes all, it must shed its racist logos, customs, and traditions. Even in 2021, I can picture Sheriff Andy Griffith sitting in front of the general store playing his guitar and thinking about the division that this mascot is causing the good people of his town. What would Andy do? I think it's obvious he would do the kind thing, the Christian thing. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us. We ought to lay down our lives to our brothers and sisters.
Thank you. Kerrigan Marlow.
Hi, my name is Kerrigan Marlow, and my address is on the record. As we all know, there is a right and wrong side of history. When discussing the history of Native Americans, it is obvious of the mistreatment. There is a common misconception that the issue with Native Americans is in the past, but that is simply not true. In fact, Indigenous people didn't even gain the right to religion until 1978. Despite the sad history involving Native Americans, schools, such as South Point, continue to contribute to the impression of this group. Students before me have come up here and talked about the psychological effects mascots have on Indigenous people and its contributions to depression, anxiety, and exclusion. Students before me who are Indigenous have come forward talking about how insensitive this mascot is towards their culture. According to the Census Bureau, approximately 0.6% of those who reside in Gaston County are Indigenous. As a member of Gaston County, I have heard Gaston County representatives pride themselves on being inclusive and providing an educational working environment. But it seems as if that rule does not apply to Indigenous people. It seems as if Indigenous people who come up here before me talking about the mascots and their negative effects on them doesn't matter to you. I understand that this is a small percentage of people, but these people are part of our community. Bigger institutions such as the NFL have come to realize the racial depictions of Native Americans are unjust, and with this realization, the NFL removed the racist mascot. Our society is progressing, and eventually more and more people are coming to realize the insensitivity of hosting Native Americans for mascot purposes. A common argument I have heard in regards to this mascot is, it's tradition. I hope one day Gaston County will stop trying to include racist caricatures of Indigenous people as a prideful part of our history. I hope Gaston County comes to realize that some traditions that hurt others needs to be changed. As I said in the beginning of the speech, there is a right and wrong side of history. By ignoring those who are Indigenous within our community, You are illustrating your support for the years of oppression of this group. You are illustrating that you don't truly care for every member of this community. I hope you realize what side of history that you guys are on right now. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Emily Rollins.
Good evening. My name is Emily, and happy Native American Heritage Month. Today, I am here, once again, speaking on the derogatory and stereotypical nature of South Point's mascot. In June of 2002, the NC State Board of Education issued an action statement that called on all schools in North Carolina to educate themselves on the educational, curricular, and psychological effects of using American Indian sports mascots and logos, and that all public schools administrators review their policies and procedures towards the use of these mascots, logos, and all demeaning imagery. Let me repeat. In 2002, Gaston County Board of Education, what exactly have we been doing in those 19 years? To date, according to the WNCC EIB, 33 total schools, or 55% of NC public schools with Native American mascots and logos have been eliminated. Yet here we sit, now part of the minority of public schools in NC who still cling on to this mascot that perpetuates racial discrimination within our educational system. So, why, after all these speakers and protests, do you continue to ignore us? Maybe instead of protecting students, you choose to protect your wallet. Maybe you feel it would be too costly to update the mascot. Is it just blatant disregard for the students and citizens of Gaston County? In either case, you are choosing pride or money over the members of our community. On the Effective School Board Members section of the North Carolina School Boards Association webpage, it states, being a board member means serving the entire community and ensuring every deliberation, decision, and action reflects the interest of every student. Sadly, after an entire year of inactivity on this topic, I don't feel as if our entire community is being served in this way. In fact, I don't even feel our voices are being heard, especially the voices of the minorities in our community. Thank you, and I hope you'll consider this information.
Thank you. Ryan Sims.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Sims, and I am a current senior at South Point High School. I am here to speak against South Point's mascot and to reiterate many of the points I made earlier to the press. I'm one of the many students of South Point and Gaston County to speak out against South Point's mascot. There's no need to mince words here. South Point's mascot is racist, dehumanizing, and wrong on every basis. It is founded upon the sole basis that being racist towards Native Americans is acceptable. And that is a basis that has plagued our world's history and is still prevalent to this day, as you can see from this mascot. As a student of South Point, a unique perspective is handed to me regarding our mascot. I have personally seen the adverse effects of the mascot within our own student body. I, along with other students I've spoken to, feel uncomfortable representing my own school and feel a strong disconnect between my school and the racist mascot that it presents. I'm a proud South Point student. I'm not a proud Red Raider. I never have and never will be a proud Red Raider. I have friends of mine who attend Gaston County schools and attend South Point who have spoken out about feeling alienated by South Point's mascot, expressing that they feel valued not as people, but as tokens. Can you imagine that? Attending your own high school and feeling unwelcome solely based upon your race. No child should have to imagine that, let alone experience that. This is the culture that is being upheld at South Point. This is the culture that we are trying to change. No child should have to be negatively affected by their own school's intolerance. History was never made through inaction, and together we can make history for the good of all. Thank you.
Thank you. Leana Ware.
Hi, my name is Leana Ware, and my address is on the form. Happy Native American Heritage Month. I would like to ask you a question. I would appreciate it if you could really listen to my question and reflect on it. How are you celebrating Indigenous heritage this month? Do you think you are honoring Indigenous people? Do you really think South Point's Red Raider mascot honors Native culture?
I do not. Many others do not, and they have come up to this platform to tell you so. Although I am not a Native person myself, I stand with Native people who are telling you this mascot is wrong. It is a racist caricature of a Native person. The name of South Point's mascot is the Red Raider. Why red? All the indigenous people I've seen have not resembled the color red. The second half of the mascot's name is derived from the word raid, which can mean attack, assault, onslaught, or invasion. The irony of the name being that Native people were the ones being invaded when Europeans came to the United States and murdered and pillaged the Native people. Next week, it will be Thanksgiving. I'm sure you wouldn't want to think about it, but Thanksgiving has a much darker side than taught in public schools. I didn't even know the real history behind Thanksgiving until a short while ago. Native people did teach colonists how to survive, that's true, and colonists did eat with some of the Wampanoag people, though there is no evidence that the Wampanoag people were invited. After what most people consider the first Thanksgiving, the colonists of Plymouth took over the Wampanoag's land, those who the colonists were in debt to. The colonists and the Wampanoag were no longer friendly, and soon a war started. The leader of the Wampanoag people was killed, his wife and child sold into slavery, and his body quartered and hung from trees, and his head put on a pike at the entrance to Plymouth, where it sat as a warning to those who opposed the colonies for over 20 years. Many more massacres as well as mistreatments of Native people followed. I've and others have talked to many of them, including the residential schools that have stripped indigenous children of their culture and abused and murdered many of them. 90% of Native people died when colonists invaded their culture due to disease and violence combined. Indigenous people have faced centuries of being hunted, massacred, and chased from their homes. They've been called slurs and insults, one of which is South Point's current mascot. Do you really think this is honoring Indigenous people? As you sit at your table with your family next Thursday, I want you to think of the deaths and sacrifices of Indigenous people this month. As you eat turkey and corn, think of who. Okay, thank you for your time and hopefully for your consideration.
Thank you. Rebecca LeClaire.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca LeClaire. My address is on the form. Before I state on who I am, first I'd like to say that I'm just tired as a Native American to come and speak before you about the same thing that has been brought up numerous times. People say all the time, don't you have anything else to do? I do. There's a lot of things I could be doing. So if you would actually change this mascot, I could start doing those things also. But until you do, I'm here. My name is Rebecca LeClaire. I'm the chairperson of Metrolina Native American Association, representing 10,000 Native Americans in the Charlotte area, including Gaston County. I also serve on the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs, and I'm a member of the Lumbee tribe. I have been a member of Retire the Red Raiders for almost 2 years now. Many of you sitting here from the Gaston County School Board know me from the numerous emails concerning the mascot. I really don't know what to say because you already know why I'm here. I want the mascot, the Red Raider, for South Point High School removed. Tribal people have been telling schools and sports teams for decades, we are not your mascot. We are not honored. And that's what I hear all the time on social media. Aren't you honored that South Point has an Indian head up? No, I'm not honored when you get in the stadium and act like you're crazy, mocking my culture. That's not an honor. You go to UNC Pembroke, that's the Braves. That's an honor. There's a difference between UNC Pembroke with the Brave and South Point High School with the Indian head mascot called the Red Raider. There's a big difference when it comes to honor, and this school board needs to understand that. I am tired as a tribal leader to keep coming to these meetings and repeating the same thing. Fed up. Fed up is not the word for what I am. I hope you hear the anger in my voice. I drove 45 minutes to come here and say the same thing that you already know. Remove the mascot. It's offensive. I'm not going to sit up here and beg you to do it. I'm a commissioner for the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs. I sat up under Governor Cooper. If you don't remove it, General Assembly is going to remove it. Because I promise you a bill is coming before the General Assembly to remove this mascot. I've asked you nicely, and if you don't do it, we're going to force your hand to do it. I mean, just do the right thing. A bill should not be created for you to do that. I am a tribal member. People say, there was the Native Americans? I'm here. The Lumbee tribe showed up. The Lumbee tribe showed up. And you still refuse to meet with tribal leaders. It's disrespectful. Your alumni has asked for meetings and you won't do it. It's disrespectful.
Haley Brazil.
Tanake Ni Ya Haley Brazil. I'm a citizen of the Catawba Nation, and my address is on the form. I'm going to pretty much repeat what I said to the press today. This is not a new fight. Since the 1970s, technically 1968, Indigenous people have been fighting for the removal of Native American mascots and has successfully removed 2/3 or 2,000 of Native mascots in schools and education systems. We represent a fight that has been fought for 5 decades. Ask, are any of you around the age of 5 decades? This is how long we have been fighting. Would Gaston County School Board have the same resistance against removing a mascot called the Black Raiders? What about the White Raiders? Although we, as Native people, aren't the ones that stole anyone else's land. Why are Native American issues ignored and silenced? Do they not realize that this undermines our sovereignty, which is a civil rights violation? Why are Native mascots the only ethnicity that is used widespread throughout the entire nation? Our coalition is backed by the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs, the Metrolina Native American Association, the Lumbee Tribe Tribal Council. We share the same opinion as the National Congress of American Indians and the National Indian Education Association. I will repeat that. We share the same opinion as the National Indian Education Association. How can you ignore the groups that have Native heritage? I asked the Gaston County Board of Education to meet with us and to please put us on your agenda. I would like to say that today I had a gentleman, I'm on the news, you may have seen me a couple times on the news in the past upcoming days. I had a gentleman message me and call me a lot of slurs. I have been told to kill myself, to commit suicide. I have been spit on during protest as an Indigenous woman who is sacred to this land. This same gentleman told me to go back to the country that I came from. And my response was, I'm already here. Gaston County is my homeland as a Catawba person. South Point High School and East Gaston High School sit on my land. I emailed his work. I asked for the code of conducts. They fired him on spot. What is your code of conducts? Do you represent the same resistance to get rid of this hatred? Keep our children sacred. Keep our women sacred. Elevate our voices and listen to us because silence is violence. Hawu.
Thank you. Jesse Jacobs. Jesse Jacobs. And I'm going to try this one. Rosina. I don't think she's here. Laura Sexton.
Hello. Hi, my name is Laura Sexton. I teach Spanish at South Point High School, and my address is on the record. I want to tell you about a toothache I had. I lived with the toothache for weeks, a toothache that kept me from eating, that caused me to literally scream in pain in the middle of the night. Objectively, my pain was real. Upon arriving at urgent care, I was sent directly to ER because I could not even speak to explain the problem. The real problem was more than the pain, though. It was a lifetime of that didn't hurt and, oh, it's not that bad. that had convinced me that my pain was insignificant, that I should work through it and not complain because it could be so much worse. I have been careful to teach my own children that if they feel pain, the inflictor does not get to decide that they don't. Even if it's me or their dad, if they say that what we did hurt, it is flat out erroneous to tell them that it doesn't. It is morally wrong to convince another person that their pain doesn't matter or doesn't exist. I admit, I get huffy when I'm called out for playing too rough, but I don't keep going. We can be upset that something we thought was fine in actuality isn't. It feels painful, like we have been deceived. And we have. When members of your own community tell you that what you are doing, what you are allowing is hurting them, you don't get to deny what they feel. When studies from Gaughan, Davis Delano and Freiberg, King and Springwood, Strong and Spindle, LeVay, Callis and Rodriguez, LaRoque, McDonald, Weatherly and Ferraro, Kim Prieto, Goldstein, Ozazaki and Kirshner all confirm that mascots like the Red Raider harm minority students, saying it's not that bad doesn't make the harm stop. The many students, graduates, parents, and teachers, representatives of the Indigenous community who have written and stood here and bared their pain, who could somehow find the words while the situation is still urgent instead of emergency, when they say they are hurting and your silent reply is, that didn't hurt and it's not that bad, you are lying. You are lying to them, you are lying to yourselves, to the others who are inflicting the hurt and denying their complicity. There are numerous studies and people here now saying that the Red Raider mascot is causing pain to our community and to our children. We cannot decide that their pain is not real because we personally do not feel it, or because we fear we may be causing it. Who are we if we keep going even when they say it hurts? What are we willing to harm our fellow citizens, our children, to hold on to?
Thank you. Dr. Jason Edward Black.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Jason Black. Address is on the form. I'm a professor of communication and social change. I've been studying the mascot issue for exactly 20 years this year, and my work has culminated in numerous books and articles, 2 international fellowships dedicated solely to the negative impact of mascots on Indigenous people. I'm here today to appeal to the Gaston School Board to, in the least, consider opening a discussion into the Red Raider mascot. You've heard from many people about the public health implications of the mascot for Indigenous people. 12 sources were just named by the previous speaker. That's 12 out of about 250 sources in academia and in psychology and in sociology and in public health and in public education. These studies are verifiable. They're time-tested. They've been around since 1968. This isn't a new flash-in-the-pan issue. This didn't just crop up in the summer of 2020. It's deeply rooted in improving respect for Indigenous people and in reconciliation, and here's a good word, truth. For my part here, I want to say 2 main things to the school board. The first is that publicly elected officials owe it to citizens to listen to points of view, not just 3 minutes times 20 people on a random Monday, but to actually converse. You're hired to do that. It's the core of our American democratic tradition. It's the way that civic society functions. To hide behind silence is both counter to the democratic values that I hope you hold dear, but it's also noticed because sins of omission are equally seen as are sins of commission. So for the sake of human respect, but also the systems we cherish, okay, open a discussion. What's to gain? Fair deliberation, just leadership. A conversation with tribal leaders whose ancestors were here long before ours. Second, I'd like the board to consider how mascots connect with that long history of violence regarding Indigenous people. You've heard a lot of this already. Words like raiders linked to stereotypes of Indigenous people being violent and backwards. We know that raider means criminality. We know that it means stealing and pillaging and maiming. These stereotypes have been used against Indigenous people for centuries, whether we're talking about Indian removal or hundreds slain at Wounded Knee, residential schools where children have been left to die. We've seen evidence of this as recently as July. 300 bodies found in northern Turtle Island. These stereotypes co-sign mascots, and mascots underwrite the stereotypes themselves. Are we to believe that historical violence is to be honored by schools and sports franchises? Come on, that's daft. Change the mascot and center human beings here in Gaston County.
Thank you. Jamin Jenkins. Mr. Jenkins, Jamin.
Hello, my name is Jamin Jenkins. Address is on the form. I have a son at Belmont Middle School that came to support the removal of mask mandates. In life, there are risks and rewards for every action we undertake. I know there are risks of rolling back mask mandates, but I believe the rewards outweigh the risks. Compared to early 2020, when mask mandates were put in place, I believe the risks have been mitigated due to available vaccine, our better understanding of the low impact of COVID on children, and achievement of flattening the curve. I believe the rewards of interpersonal connectivity and personal well-being outweigh the risks of possible COVID transmission. I will close by offering one suggestion to begin to break the cycle of mask mandates, and that is to allow individual teachers the ability to choose whether their students wear masks or not. Finally, please remember that the first families to settle in America were pilgrims who weighed the risk of possible death at sea compared to the reward of a new life in America, and they felt the rewards outweighed those risks. Thank you.
Thank you. Pamela Miller.
Good evening, Chairman Ramsey, Dr. Booker, and school board members. My name is Pam Miller. I live on Cramerton Village Drive in Cramerton. I come to you with over 300 signatures on a petition regarding the urgent need to stabilize our schools. We know that many of the issues that educators face today are due to the decade-long attack and underfunding of public schools by the General Assembly. We understand that. However, we have reached a breaking point in Gaston County schools. We have educators that are walking out the door, continuing to compound our staffing shortage that we already have. We need to do something. We need to work together to solve these issues, which is why Gaston NCAE put together a petition. Here are our main points. We need to address the immediate crisis of staffing shortages by ensuring that all staff are paid for additional work required when asked to cover classes. Yes, they're giving up their planning time. That means they're having to take away time from their families to continue to plan good lessons for their students. We need to stop pulling teacher assistants from positions that they were hired to work. Kindergarten teachers are facing a great challenge now because many students have not gone to preschool due to COVID. So it's even more urgent that they have a teacher assistant in their classrooms. We need the addition of long-term substitute positions at each school proportional to the number of average uncovered classrooms. And one thing that's on our petition that has been taken care of by our school system is providing competitive substitute wages, and we thank you for that. We also need to increase teacher assistant wages. We need to increase the number of teacher assistants in middle and high school, as well as elementary school. And we need to commit to a proactive campaign to attract and retain staff, working to retain existing staff by using COVID relief funds to increase wages, reduce class sizes, and ensure that teachers can at least have a lunch break. These are all things that are necessary for teachers to feel valued, for staff members to feel valued in Gaston County Schools. And right now, many of our staff members do not feel valued. Just a few quotes from our petition. One staff member says, "My mental health is suffering every day from continuing to do this job. I feel like a babysitter who is not there to teach, but who is there to make sure children come to school and don't give COVID."
Thank you. Benjamin Connor.
Hey, I'm Ben Connor. My address is on the form. I come here today before you as a member of the Occaneechi tribe, which is a state-recognized tribe here in North Carolina. I just kind of want to give you guys a little bit of history from my time here to speak to you. For those of us who were just laughing, we know that the Pilgrims weren't the original people in this land, that the original people were the indigenous peoples of North and South America. And it's important to remember that because of the fact that I've been a genealogist by trade for fun. I've only been paid to do it a couple times, but I've been searching my family tree since I was 13 years old. And so doing my family tree and other people's family trees, going back, the things that I've seen absolutely shock me. It's pretty crazy to think that some of the names I see here before me are the same names I saw on plots of land that were on maps from the late 1700s and early 1800s of families that owned or had just recently acquired, I should say, this land. Before them, the land belonged to the indigenous people. This is now being known as Belmont, Gaston County, whatever you want to call it. But before that, it was the Catawba's land. And so it's important for me to point out the fact that the same thing that everyone else has pointed out, the mascot, it's self-explanatory how racist it is. The Red Raider. I don't even need to use other colors or criminal terms to tell you, you're talking about a skin color thief, a Red Raider. And to me, that is just absolutely leaves no wiggle room at all to justify it as a piece of trying to remember heritage or anything like that, because the only heritage, at least the predominant heritage that we see in Gaston County, is that of predominantly European descendant people and people, or I should say people of descended places that were not North America. And so for them to claim this land as their own and then use a symbol of an indigenous person to this land and to say that they're using this symbol in a way to honor those people is a slap in the face, because they had just kicked them off their land. And then they want to go and call them the Raiders. So you're not only kicking them off their land, you're calling them thieves too. So this is a forced system that causes children to really go through a lot of psychological hardships because of the fact that they see Native Americans as simply rogue, wild people living just off the earth, which is actually a very hard skill, I can tell you as an outdoorsman, to live off the earth. But they did it successfully for thousands of years until the introduction of disease and other forms of genocide. So I think it's necessary to completely remove the Red Raider mascot, at least the symbolism.
Thank you. Kelly Soley. Kelly Soley.
Good evening, board members. My name is Kelly Solly. I live in Belmont. My twins attend Page Primary. I'm here to speak in support of continuing the mask mandate in order to keep our children and families as safe as possible during these difficult times. I greatly appreciate the hard work that you have done for voting for masks. As we know, vaccines are now available for children ages 5 and up, but even if we received our shot today, they would not be considered fully vaccinated until December the 20th. Lifting the mask mandate at this point would be counterproductive. My family contracted COVID in February from a family member. I have been fortunate that both of my boys have been relatively healthy so far in life, with only minor colds and stomach bugs. But even with that, COVID hit us hard. One of my twins had it more severe and initially had a rare eye infection, and we were informed that this was a symptom of COVID. He was prescribed eye drops, cold compresses, and after a few days it did resolve, but his eyes were blood red and painful. After that, it was fevers, lack of being able to eat, fatigue, pain. After 2 weeks of this, the pediatrician had us undergo multiple blood tests and chest x-rays in order to test for concerns of pediatric inflammatory disease. There was nothing else I could do for my child other than pray that his body was able to fight this. Seeing COVID on x-rays for your 5-year-old is something that will haunt me for the rest of my life. People say that children don't get very sick from COVID, but I'm here to say that even though my children were not in the hospital and we were able to manage it at home, they were very sick. And it was terrifying. And I do not want another child to suffer like that. I know the stories, you've heard them, the science, but simply put, having a mask mandate prevents quarantine of entire classrooms when one person ends up contracting COVID. That is the bottom line, keeping as many kids and teachers in class as possible. My boys have no issues wearing the masks. For them, it is just another thing they need to bring to school with them. They remember having COVID in February, and they understand all too well what it's like, and they will tell you very passionately that COVID sucks. Masks aren't perfect, but they are way better than nothing. It is important to remember that we can be contagious for 3 days before we have any symptoms. Wearing a mask protects the people around you, and I beg you as a mother to please continue to stand strong and give us a little more time to get our kids vaccinated. Thank you.
Thank you. Sally Drennan. Stephanie Christie Franks. And the last one is Michael Crisp.
Hi, my name is Michael Crisp. I'm a resident of Stanley, North Carolina. My address is on the form. Before I get started, my comments are my own personal convictions and are not based on any business or organization I'm affiliated with. I'm here to speak based on something that cannot be disputed. That is, each one of you represent the voice of the people in your district. You are not appointed by a teachers union nor appointed by healthcare workers. Even though both are needed and highly respected in our community, you are elected by the people to represent the voice of the people. There is no pandemic above the Constitution. Our inalienable rights are not given to us by the government or the school board, but they are our God-given rights at birth. Public education, as you know, was established to be administered from the public level, not a centralized bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. Why? Because parents know what's best for their child. Decisions should not be influenced by any outside agencies. It's a very slippery slope for outside agencies to get up in a public setting to influence votes of board members elected by the people and not their institution. Mandates are not laws and will not stand in court. Laws are established by legislation, and no law has been passed by legislators to mandate masks for school children. The analogy of seatbelt and drinking and driving laws is not compatible here. Seatbelt and drinking and driving laws were passed by legislation and signed into law. Children wearing masks has not been signed into law. Also, there is no data of scientific clinical trials or peer-to-peer reviews that show masks work against COVID. We're not talking about the flu or any other coronavirus, or that would have been, talked about when the flu was around. We're talking about COVID. The PCR testing was calibrated with the common cold, not COVID samples. Since that is the case, how can information on cases be validated a person truly has COVID? The only report I received from this board stated, masks do not protect humans against COVID-19. In Gaston County, the stadiums are full, the playgrounds are full, the stores and restaurants are full with children living their life and not wearing masks. You are elected by the people, and the people are saying make masks optional for Gaston County and do not quarantine kids who are not sick and who do not test positive for COVID-19. We must follow the Constitution, not our opinion or personal persuasion. Thank you for the opportunity to share my comments today.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your comments and continued concerns of Gaston County Schools. Although the board does not typically respond during the period of public comments, we do want to hear from the public and direct our staff to work on those issues that need to be addressed. Thank you for your comments. The next item on the agenda is approval and correction of minutes. This item is an action item. I need a motion to approve the minutes for October the 18th regular meeting. Mr. Hall, motion, second by Ms. Guthrie. All in favor? The minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda allows for a report from our superintendent on the COVID update. Dr. Booker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'd like to start our COVID update by talking about the testing centers that you allowed us to operate. Our main testing center is on Garrison Avenue, and that is for all employees as well as students to use. Additionally to that, we were allowed to participate in the ABC Collaborative pilot for a Test to Stay program. So in addition to the Garrison site, we've opened up satellite sites at Carr Elementary, Chavis Middle, Cramerton Middle, Lingerfeld Elementary, North Belmont Elementary, Robinson Elementary, Stanley Middle, and Tryon Elementary. This allows students who are exposed but show no symptoms to test every other day for the first 5 days and allow them to stay in school. And the exciting part about that for all of us is that from November 1st, we have been able to test 235 students, and only 5 of those tested positive. So that meant 230 students have been able to stay in the classroom, and that's what we had hoped that the testing would allow, and that testing still goes on as we operate our schools this week. So we appreciate the support for that. One of the things that we have had a lot of discussions about is just what is COVID-19 funding like? And that's a complicated issue because you've had the American Rescue Plan, often referred to as ARP. You've had the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds, known as ESSER funds. These combined in our country have been allocated $122 billion. And when you take that $122 billion from a national level down to North Carolina, our state received $3.6 billion to address the effects of the coronavirus and its operation of public schools on all of the academic, social, emotional, mental health needs. And it comes with guidelines. That money flows through the Department of Public Instruction. That is the common funding vehicle for public schools in North Carolina. Some 70% of our funds, even the federal funds, will often flow through the Department of Public Instruction. They are charged with managing the ESSER funds. To get access to those funds, we have to make application for those funds, and then they have to approve our application and set up a budget process. They set budget codes that we then allocate the money into. So it's all monitored and has reporting requirements, all of which is available on the Department of Public Instruction's website. They track how our money is being allocated. It's really to know that we have received about $120 million in allocations. That is a considerable amount of money, but that money is for a 3-year period of time. So as you see on this chart that's displayed, we have expended $24 million to date on COVID funds, which allows 97 to be remaining, recognizing we are just halfway into our current fiscal year, not quite, and then you'll have the remaining 2 years that these funds are to cover for supplemental things. The next chart is just all of these charts I'm showing you are available on the North Carolina Department of Public website. So they are tracking and showing how the different PRC codes are allocating our dollars. This pie chart, again, just shows through the different, you see ESSER 1, the GEAR funds, ESSER 2, ESSER 3. These are the different tranches of money that have come that make up the $120-some billion across America. These are the different fundings that have been done from the federal government. This chart shows just the broken PRC codes and what we've expended and what we've been allotted through that. And it goes on for other pages to give you an idea. You see on the next where it talks about our summer programs and the requirements. So some of these funds are designated and have specific requirements to be expended. We must meet the rules that are established with that. You may have heard in an earlier presentation Mr. Hoskins say we're used to having federal funds with strings attached. These have ropes attached, a lot of strict regulations and rules that we have to utilize. So this last just again shows a further break of those. But what does it really mean to Gaston County? Well, you remember our summer learning program. State superintendent was here 2 weeks ago to look at what we had done with our summer learning because people liked the expansive program that we had done. We had 14 locations. We were able to pay our teachers a premium to be involved in that because recognizing all that they had done coming into that and what they did. It also allowed us to have additional training to support our teachers as they faced students returning. It offered transportation and lunch for those students in addition to all the supplies and materials. So millions of dollars will be expended over this period of time on summer learning. Additional school personnel, as you heard the petition, we have allocated additional teaching positions. For example, in one of the allocations of the 54 positions allocated, only 18 have been filled because we all know about a labor shortage. This is not a lack of the board allocating funds to try and address, it's trying to fill positions. So we are very fortunate through a lot of diligent work that we now have full-time nurses at our schools. But as I say that, there's a school out there that we don't have one today because there's been turnover and there's things. But we have been able to go from where we had 4 nurses allocated to now we have an allocation that has a nurse for every school, which is a major step for us. And that's what these funds have been used for. We also were able to increase our substitute allocation to schools. Again, as was referenced earlier, the labor pool and the number of people willing to serve as subs has been challenging, so we've tried to increase the pay to increase their participation. Next, personal protection equipment, PPE. A lot of people didn't know what that was 3 years ago. We have spent a lot of money, obviously, on masks, hand sanitizers, but we've also increased the spraying that's done between classes and on buses. And a lot of that science has changed throughout the pandemic, but a lot of those practices are good practices that are still included. A great one for us was this ability to buy air purifiers for all of our classrooms. So all classrooms have an independent air purifier in there that is treating our classes. Under technology, during the pandemic, we were able to secure over 1,000 hotspots and try and meet the digital divide in our community by allowing to give access to those who did not have internet access. We've continued to be able to use hotspots through the funding that we have. We've expanded our Wi-Fi. We've put outside ports where people can be in our parking lots and get this. Also, as you know, it's allowed us to move totally to a one-to-one and to start a refreshing program for that. And then finally, we remember our feeding program and what that entailed and the millions of meals that were served to all members of our community. And then as we come back to school, we've maintained a free breakfast and lunch for the majority of our students. We've done extra custodial allotments to support schools. The learning management systems were a mandate from the state that hit right into COVID. As Dr. Balknight has said to you in several presentations, not the best time to do that. But it was already required and in process, and we had to proceed with that. So I wanted to just give you that as a backdrop for this. I know you've gotten a lot of questions. We get questions. So I encourage anyone, when you go to the state website, you will see every district in the state of North Carolina's plan there. And you click through and find Gaston counties. But one thing that, yes, ma'am.
Go ahead, Tim.
One thing that the plan does allow for is for us to make another consideration. And I just want to take a moment and say that for 20 months, GCS employees have faced challenges, many challenges, and they have worked to provide a valuable service to our community. And that service begins with our teachers. remembering these are duly licensed professionals, many of them having 6, 7 years of higher education before they enter our classrooms. And they do it with dignity and bring a level of quality that is admirable. Their values and technical and professional competencies are to be respected because theirs is a noble profession, and many will call it as a calling. As a son of educators, I grew up never knowing who was going to eat dinner with us because that's just what they do. So when you think about our teachers and what they do and the values and standards they live by, the teacher assistants that support them, librarians, media specialists, sysops. You don't even know what a sysop stands for, but I can tell you one thing, a device wouldn't be in a kid's hand without a sysop.
Amen.
All these folks support learning. And this is all organized at each site by administrators who are so dedicated and have worked unbelievable hours, foregone vacations, foregone opportunities with their families to support the different challenges. And then you think about the day-to-day. We recognize the bus driver for 40 years service. If they don't deliver the kids, we don't have it. If you think about all the cafeteria workers, the custodians. I was in a school earlier this, last week, and seeing the custodian and just knowing the value he brings to that building and the way he carries himself and the way he is a magnet for young men and is a role model. Our counselors, social workers, nurses, and then let's think about the lights and all that we have in our facility workers. The office workers that do all that. I can go on because we folks have 38, almost 4,000 employees. And so due to those additional duties and responsibilities that they have admirably picked up, the times they have spent doing other things beyond what they're called to do, we have seen our fellow districts throughout the state from time to time try to do additional compensation because it is allowed clearly in the ESSER guidelines to offer retention bonuses. And so I would propose to our Board of Education that all employees who are hired prior to September 1, 2021, who are permanent, not on contract, not interim or temporary, but those permanent employees who work at least 50% of a week on a regular basis and are employed in December, that we offer them a one-time bonus of $1,000. We estimate that roughly 3,800 employees will be eligible for this. It will cost $3.8 million. We have the ability, I've worked with Mr. Hoskins before presenting this to you. Our CFO says, in the way we have submitted our plans and the way we have done it, that we have the ability to do it. And so I would like to propose that that you authorize us to pay a $1,000 one-time bonus on December 10th to our employees. Mr. Chair, I'll pause.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if it please the chair and the vice chair and the members of the board, I'd like to make a motion, if that would be suitable at this time.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the COVID retention bonus proposal Mr. Booker just proposed, and I'm just going to repeat some of the words and language. The amount of the bonus will be $1,000 one-time payment for eligible employees, and that's estimated at 3,800 employees. That's a total of estimation of $3,800,000. And proposed date of this pay would be December 10th, 2021.
Second. I second.
I think we're all going to say
And
second.
I think we need to stand.
Well, we're going to.
Thank you.
Before I ask for a vote, I know that some of us would like to comment on this, so I will give the floor to Ms. Guthrie first.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I do want to comment. And I want to, first of all, say that I know that later on, it's going to be read, a proclamation proclaiming American Education Week. I know that. But I want to say what a wonderful way to acknowledge the hard work, the commitment that our educators here in Gaston have done. I prepared this just to say Since last March, our teachers have been on the front lines in their classrooms of their colleagues, at the front of their schools, on bus routes, in lunchrooms, on playgrounds, in health rooms. You really have no clue as to what it takes to navigate a school day. And because of that, we want you to know that this bonus that you are going to receive is our way of saying to you, teachers, that we greatly appreciate you. It's our way of saying to Sydney Hillman of Lowell Elementary School, we greatly appreciate you. It's our way of saying to Duke Energy in their support of STEM education, we appreciate what you do for our teachers. It's our way of saying to the Community Foundation, thank you for supporting our school social workers, because they are out there in the field. They do look for little Johnny when little Johnny doesn't show up in school, but his name is on the roster. It's our way of saying to Francine Burris, who drove for 40 years, we appreciate you bringing the students to schools. Gaston County Superintendent Dr. Booker and your cabinet, we appreciate all that you do. And to our NCAE, your advocacy, we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Guthrie. Anyone else? Ms. Lovelace?
Educators and support personnel, thank you so much for what you have done and what you are going to continue to do. And I beg you, just please hang in there. It's going to get better.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else
Well, you
before
know
we
I
vote?
do.
Oh, I forgot. Dr. Cherry wants to talk too.
I'm going to concur with the other ladies because, you know, we're the ones that always talk. But they pretty much said everything that I wanted to say. But please don't think that we don't appreciate everything that you have done and that you will continue to do. And nobody has ever expected what you've been asked to do. And you've done it graciously. I know you're tired, but we know that you're not going to give up on our children because that's what y'all do every day. And we can't do this without you. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cherry. Anyone else? On behalf of the school board, I would just like to personally thank each and every one of you going beyond the calling of being a teacher. This has been a struggle for y'all guys and us for the last 18 months, and thank you for what you've done for our students. This is just a small token we can give back, and we're just excited Dr. Booker brought this to us where we can vote on it tonight. So that said, all in favor? And it's unanimous. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Thank you, members of the board, for supporting that. And again, thanks to all the folks out there who do the work. Next, we have with us again Mr. Steve Eaton, who will give you all an update on the COVID numbers in Gaston County. Mr. Eaton?
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. Good evening, Chairman Ramsey, members of the school board, and Dr. Booker. Thank you again for having me this evening. And as a local public health director, I would be remiss if I didn't thank all of the teachers, principals, school personnel, custodians, for all of the hard work. So rightly deserved. And you know, we as public health could not do it without your personnel as well. Your staff, your teachers, your principals, and your leadership are truly inspiring to us. And again, want to thank them. So that gave me the goosebumps when that happened. So thank you all very much. Okay, we'll go to the next slide for a summary of our key metrics. When we look at our current key metrics for this week and last week, you'll see that we have two indicators that are trending slightly upward this week, those being the number of daily new cases and our positivity rate. When we look at the daily new cases, you can see that we're trending slightly upward in daily new cases. While it's not a sizable increase, it's one that we're paying attention to, particularly as we move into the holiday season. And I know that we went through this last year, but again, we're coming off of Halloween, moving into Thanksgiving, moving into Christmas time, and we're beginning to see this tick up a little bit. So again, want to just continue to encourage the community to pay attention to those numbers and take appropriate measures, especially with indoor gatherings. Our positivity rate for Gaston County has also increased. While it's down from the 12.6% that I reported the last time we met, it has increased since last Monday when it was at 6.3%, and now it's moved to 7.9%. Again, we'd like to see this, see our positivity rate at or below 5%. And we also remain in the second highest category for North Carolina in the 6 to 10% positivity rate. As you can see with hospitalizations, we've seen a tremendous decrease in those being hospitalized. Now we're seeing a very small indication that there might be some leveling in the census. And currently that's hospital census is around 35 patients hospitalized due to COVID. And this slide again kind of puts all three of those together: cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. As again, you can see them trending downward, and then all of a sudden you see that next to last green bar, the average daily case count ticking up just a little bit. So let's transition now and look at school data. Again, as I mentioned at each meeting, this data is regarding all school-age children for Gaston County. It's not specific to just Gaston County public schools, but rather includes public, private, and charter. So this slide shows you the number of weekly COVID positive cases in Gaston County for the 4 to 18-year-old population. As you can see, the number of new cases in the school population has decreased since the last time we met, which is great. However, again, as I mentioned earlier, you'll see over the last 2 weeks, the number of weekly cases for the 4 to 18-year-old population has slightly increased. The red line on this slide shows you the 4 to 18-year-old population as a percent of total Gaston County cases. This percentage remained consistent at about 25% from early September through October. However, recently this has moved from 25% to 31%. So phrased another way, while the number of daily new cases has decreased since the last school board meeting, the percentage of school-age positives has trended upward to 31% as a percent of total Gaston County cases. This is a very encouraging and positive slide that I feel reflects the great work, and Dr. Booker mentioned earlier about the Test to Stay program, as well as the masking that's continued on within the schools that's really helped children stay in school. Since October 11th, Gaston County Schools has remained fairly level and students exposed and needing to quarantine. As I stated at the last meeting, when comparing to other school districts that did not have a mask requirement, this could easily and possibly be nearly sixfold the numbers that we're seeing here. With regards to faculty and staff, again, the status for all Gaston County schools, public, private, and charter. On this slide, we have staff positives and exposures combined on the one slide. In green, you'll see positive cases, and in gray, you'll see those who are exposed and had to quarantine. Gaston County continues to lag significantly behind the state average for vaccination among the 12 to 17-year-old population. I know that looks hard to read, but the state is averaging around 45% and Gaston County 29% for the 12 to 17-year-olds. And for the most recently approved 5 to 11-year-old population, roughly 3% have received their first dose for that age population. Pediatric hospitalization, this slide shows you month by month the number of Gaston County children who needed to be hospitalized due to COVID. September again tied our greatest amount for a month at 7, and currently in November, we've had 1 pediatric hospitalization due to COVID. So much like last time, I wanted to compare where we were last November to where we are now. Last year, we had an average daily number of new positives at 80 compared to 52 today. On average, last year at this time, we had 9.2 youth ages 4 to 18 testing positive. Today, we're seeing an average of 16.7 testing positive. Our positivity last year at this time was 8.4%. It's currently at 7.9%. And the average COVID census at the hospital was 52 last year, and now it's standing at 28. So as I'm sure you're very well aware, North Carolina DHHS updated the Strong Schools Toolkit on October 25th to provide specific guidance to school boards and school leadership regarding mask requirements using community transmission metrics from the CDC. The community transmission metrics levels are determined by 2 indicators, case rate and positivity rate for counties. If these 2 indicators are categorized in different transmission levels, the higher one is used. So if, for example, the positivity rate was less than 8%, which would be considered moderate, but the case rate was higher than 100 per 100,000, then you would go with the higher metric, which would put you in the high transmission category. When community transmission levels decline to moderate levels for at least 7 consecutive days, school leaders can consider making face coverings optional for vaccinated individuals. And when community transmission declines to low levels, masks could be optional for everyone. Currently, for Gaston County, per the CDC, Gaston County remains in a high transmission category based on the last 7 days of new cases being over the 225 threshold at 349 cases per week, and our positivity rate is at 9.18%. So you heard me say earlier that the positivity rate was 7.9%. Internally here at the health department, we do that on a 14-day rolling average. The CDC does theirs on a 7-day average. And so based on the Strong Schools Toolkit, we use the metrics that the CDC puts out for this recommendation. And so that's holds at 9.18% positivity rate. So based on the current metrics for the CDC and the community transmission remaining at a high transmission level, public health recommendation would be to maintain masking for another month and reassess at the next school board meeting. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Eden. Anything else? Okay. Y'all have any questions for Mr. Eden?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Let me read the items here, Mr. Moore, and I'll get started. The next item is one that will be on our agenda for every regular meeting for a duration of this school year. By the new North Carolina law, all local Board of Education shall vote on a face covering policy every month and either maintain the current policy or amend it. Our current policy is that the masks are required in Gaston County Public Schools by all students, staff, and visitors of all campuses. This policy is keeping with the recommendation of the state and local health department and Strong School North Carolina Public Health Toolkits. Based on the prior agenda item, COVID update, do I hear a motion for how the board should proceed? Mr. Moore?
I'd like to make a motion that we amend the current mask mandate to make it optional, effective Monday, 11/29.
Monday, 29th of November. Okay. Do I have a second?
Discussion.
Okay, we will. Ms. Lovelace, second. Now we can have hold on.
Oh, I'm ready to discuss too.
Okay, she's first.
Okay.
Ms. Guthrie?
I am happy to hear some of what was presented by Mr. Eden. We have our teachers, we already have a shortage. We have end of course testing. We know that we have Thanksgiving, and we know that our high schools will be tested before the winter break. We have pushed, I know we just awarded the teachers a gift, but that does not make up for them having to continue in this push to provide the much needed resources, the testing, and everything else that must be done before winter break. I think it's still too early for us to remove the mask mandate. That's Doc Guthrie's opinion. I think we've heard Dr. Booker talk about the teacher shortage or the labor shortage, and we just want our teachers to know that we want you to feel valued, because we value you and we need you. And I just think that it's just too early.
Thank you, Ms. Guthrie. Mr. Dedman?
I agree with Ms. Guthrie. We have been led by our health department for the last 6 months. We followed their directions each time. I think the prudent thing to do would be to wait till after the Christmas holidays, or to vote at least next December or this next month coming up, which we have required by law, to make our teachers go through that and our students. I was talking to one of our board members a few minutes ago, and the emails that I'm receiving, it's 50-50 each way. I mean, tonight, you can see how many people were involved in it tonight. We had, 2 people speak to it? Everybody else is worried about the Red Raider. I'm more concerned about the health of our children and our teachers than anything else right now. And I would implore you to wait and do this at our next meeting. Let's go 1 more month at least to give our teachers and our students time, and then we'll have Thanksgiving behind us. Thank you,
Thank you, Mr. Dedman. Anyone else?
Dr. Booker, when do high school exams start? I can't.
December 11th.
That's a Saturday.
Well, whatever that week is, I checked.
So the 10th?
I checked. Wait a minute, I have a
Friday?
calendar. I just, am I out of order?
No.
I apologize. I'm
both
sure
of
Ms.
you are
Cherry asked
kinda
a
sure.
question.
Okay, I did check the calendar, and it said, end of course, I'm sorry, December 13th through 17th, early college, and high school, December 15th through 21st.
Yeah, the high schools will start on the 15th.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions?
And our next board meeting is on the 13th.
20. Yeah.
20.
The 20th.
When I get out of school the next day.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Mr. Moore, second by Ms. Lovelace. All in favor? And all opposed? Madam Clerk, 7-2. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I want to just make
Yes.
sure I clarify, because we'll have a bunch of administrators out there so for the rest of this week, we will maintain mask, and we will maintain mask the first 2 days of next week before the Thanksgiving break. So they have this time to continue operating as are while they develop the procedures and make the shift to making mask optional. So everybody understands.
Yeah, and
that discussion.
I'll Dr. Berg, I'll actually just read it again. Masks are optional in Gaston County Public Schools about all students, staff, and visitors at all campus. And it goes in effect Monday, November 29th. Is that correct, Mr. McGraw?
And may I ask another question?
Yes,
sir?
ma'am.
I just want to make certain that we have adequate, well, we know that we have a shortage with with subs now. We have someone in that classroom who can work if a teacher is out due to health reasons. And I know that someone may be saying, don't we have that now? But we do not need to, while we are struggling to get those end of course tests done, we do not need to struggle trying to find someone to handle those classrooms. To me, the teachers have worked diligently in trying to maintain their coursework in their classrooms, going to different classrooms to cover just to show that they are a part of the team. And I certainly want them to know that we value what you do. And that's why I feel or felt like we needed to give you that one additional month.
Thank you, Ms. Guthrie. This item will be reconsidered at our next board meeting, December the 20th, in accordance with North Carolina law, Senate Bill 654. And before we move on to the next agenda, I'm going to call a 5-minute recess. Next item on the agenda is a report from the Curriculum and Instruction Committee. Ms. Dot Guthrie is the chair of that committee. The other members of that committee are Justin Davis, Steve Hall, and Robbie Lovelace. Ms. Guthrie?
Mr. Chair, Mrs. Lovelace will be making our report.
All right, thank you.
The Curriculum and Instruction Committee met on November the 8th, 2021. Members present were Dot Guthrie, Robbie Lovelace, Justin Davis, Steve Hall, Dot Cherry, and Jeff Ramsey. The meeting was called to order at 12:01 p.m. Staff presented information for teachers to receive dual certification for English as a second language, or ESL. Teachers in the cohort will be chosen from schools with the district's largest English learner populations and will be required to remain at those schools for a minimum of 1 year after completing the program. This item is on the consent agenda. The Department of Human Resources provided an update on the draft version of the 2022-2023 school calendar. The committee reviewed the current process for students enrolling in College Now courses, formerly Career and College Promise, and how students receive course materials. Staff will continue to update the Curriculum and Instruction Committee until the plan is finalized. Staff provided information about the Scribbles contract. The contract covers expenses through June 2022 for the online enrollment platform, including other services related to student records. This item is on the consent agenda. The meeting adjourned at 2:01 p.m.
The next item on the agenda, report from the Operation Committee. The Operation Committee's chairman is Lee Debman. The other members are Dot Cherry, Kevin Collier, and Brent Moore. Mr. Debman. All right, thank you.
And I'm delighted to report on that meeting. We met on Monday, November the 1st, at 4 p.m., and Chairman Ramsey's already said who's on the committee. This was our discussion. Representatives from the architectural firm presented potential middle school concepts and designs for the new Greer Middle School. The committee recommended staff to enter into negotiations with this firm for architectural and engineering services. Staff will present that information to the board in a future meeting for review and approval. Associate Superintendent and our CFO, Gary Hoskins, informed us that appraisals were submitted by the Gaston Aquatic Center for property on the Stewart Cramer High School. A joint use agreement was also included in the shared use of the pools, the aquatic center, and the parking lots. An offer of $230,000 was made for the purchase of land. While the Operations Committee does agree with the need for the aquatic center in the county, we did not recommend accepting this offer to sell school property for their purposes. Joey Clinton, our Human Resource Executive Director, reported that 14 early contracts have been signed for student teachers that will begin in January. And the Human Resources Department will be attending and hosting several job fairs in the upcoming weeks. There are currently 15 teacher vacancies at the elementary level, 14 teacher vacancies at the middle school level, and 14 at our high schools. Mr. Clinton also reported that the positive COVID employee numbers are decreasing, and the calendar committee met and drafted 4 calendars for the 22-23 school year. They're going to meet again to narrow the selection to 2 calendars and then present that to us for review. The Executive Director of Auxiliary Services, Dr. Morgan Huchard, gave an update on the Auxiliary Services Department and planned winter projects. Dr. Huchard also informed us that the residential property in Dallas will be available for sale using the required upset bid process. The committee reviewed and recommended approval for the following contracts: the federal RFP award and the Lightspeed Systems renewal contract. These contracts will appear on the consent agenda tonight. Mr. Hoskins discussed increases in pay for substitute teachers and security officers that work our athletic events. He also confirmed an annual 3.5 bonus for classified employees will be paid in November. Our next committee meeting will be announced at a later date. I
Thank
think
you,
we
Miss-
set one in December, but I don't remember the date.
Miss-
Thank you. Okay, well,
Okay.
we didn't set one. That's
Okay.
our report.
All right, thank you for both committees. Next on the item, next on our agenda is American Education Week proclamation. This is the action item. Todd Higgins.
Vice Chairman Cherry, members of the board, and Superintendent Booker, it is a pleasure to present to you a proclamation to celebrate American Education Week in Gaston County Schools. At this time, I would like to read the proclamation. Whereas November 15th through 19th, 2021 is American Education Week, and it is an important time for us to celebrate public education and honor the hardworking professionals who strive to ensure that all children receive an outstanding education. And whereas the first American Education Week was observed 100 years ago in December 1921, and since then, schools and communities across the United States have come together each year to conduct activities that bring attention to the importance of education. And whereas, in addition to the celebration, the week is intended to serve as a time when citizens are encouraged to stand up for our schools and champion the long-held belief that public education is a pillar of democracy and a cornerstone of American opportunity. And whereas during American Education Week, it is important to highlight the significance of public schools and the role they play in educating our students and preparing them for success in life. And whereas we are extremely proud of our public schools in Gaston County, which provide excellent opportunities for young people in academics, athletics, fine arts, career training, and extracurricular activities, and also serve as an integral part of our thriving community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Gaston County Board of Education is pleased to proclaim November 15th through 19th, 2021 as American Education Week in Gaston County Schools, and request that citizens show support for public education by expressing appreciation to school personnel and celebrating the quality education that children receive in our schools. Be it further resolved that this resolution be made a part of the minutes of the Board of Education adopted this the 15th day of November 2021. And Mr. Chairman, the proclamation is before you for consideration and approval.
All right, thank you. Ms. Guthrie, would you like to make a motion on that? Okay. Second, Mr. Collier. Any comments or discussion? All in favor? That's approved. Thank you, Todd. Next on the agenda is School Health Advisory Council. This is the information item. Dr. Christy Boston.
Good evening, Chairman Ramsey, Vice Chairman Cherry, members of the board, Superintendent Booker. This evening I have with me Sandy Rudisell. Sandy is our coordinator that works with our health and PE teachers on curriculum and instruction, and she also coordinates our Student Health Advisory Council, and she is going to provide you an update on the work that that council has been doing recently.
Hey, good evening, board members and Superintendent Booker. I'd like to give a SHAC update, which stands for Student Health Advisory Council. Let me do my slides. So what is SHAC? It's an advisory team comprised of individuals in Gaston County. Members are selected from areas of health, education, and also the public sector, and we meet 3 times a year. The role of SHAC is partners with community organizations. We plan activities, share teacher strategies. We participate in curriculum development, and we also help solve problems. We use the whole school, whole community, whole child model, which is also called the WISC model. It's made up of 10 components, and we use this to determine our focus area for each year. This model also helps address health in the schools and the role of the community in supporting the schools as well. Last year, our focus area was social and emotional learning. We purchased a new health curriculum that includes the SEL, which stands for social and emotional learning. We talked about self-management, social awareness, and relationship skills. It helps students with the social emotional part development. Also, we gain community resources to provide for our students and also for our teachers. This year, our focus area is counseling, psychological, and social services. Our last meeting was September the 22nd, and our SHAC meetings, I guess the past 2 years, we focused on mental health. Our last meeting, we invited Bill Gross of the Gaston County Controlled Substance Coalition to talk about substance abuse. Mr. Gross taught our group about the calming warning signs and concerns related to substance abuse and how it's connected to mental health. We feel it is important to identify these issues with substances that our students may be struggling with, and also how we could prevent substance abuse and help refer them to appropriate help. Our meeting dates, again, we had one September 22nd, and then we had one January 26th, and then April 27th. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. And that's just the information item. Any questions? No. All right, next on the agenda is Restart School. This is the information item. Dr. Booker.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board, in 2017, we were allowed by the state of North Carolina to enter into the Restart program, and we were placed in cohort 1B, and we have 6 schools: Bessemer City Central, Sadler Elementary, Sherwood Elementary, Woodhill Elementary, Southwest Middle School, and Hunter Huss High School that are allowed to participate in the Restart program. This allows flexibility in some of the requirements placed on DPI. They have to work closely with Dr. Balknight and Mr. Hoskins related to completing the forms, and Dr. Cynthia Reynolds oversees it on a daily operational basis. So we are required to annually submit a report, and we just wanted to make sure that you knew we were meeting the reporting requirements on the Restart model. So it's information, sir.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the school calendar 2022 and 2023. This is an information item. Joy Clinton.
Good afternoon, or excuse me, good evening, Chairman Ramsey. It's been that kind of day.
Afternoon.
Vice Chairman Cherry, Superintendent Booker, and board members. I would like to share as an information item the draft calendars for the 2022-2023 school year that were created by our calendar committee. The calendar committee began working on the draft calendars for the 2022-2023 school year on October 5th, 2021. And at that October 5th meeting, we presented the calendar laws to the individuals that were participating on the committee. We began working on sample calendars. We devised the group up into different teams, and we began working on different calendars for each need that we saw and we thought that may be brought up. And we also gave the calendar committee a task, and that was to go back to their schools to meet with the stakeholders in their schools to talk about the calendar committee for the upcoming school year based upon the established rules by the statute that were put in place. We met again on October 26, 2021. At that time, we had developed some draft calendars for the group to look at, and we also had some information that the individuals on the committee shared back to the group based upon what they had heard from stakeholders in their schools. And then on November 8th, 2021, we continued getting ongoing feedback from the committee, from the school level, and the committee began to make some recommendations based on the calendars that we had developed. The calendar committee was based or made up of townships represented from 8 different areas: the Gastonia area, Lowell, Belmont, Cherryville, Dallas, Mount Holly, Bessemer City, and Cramerton. We had individuals from each of those townships on the committee. We reached out to a broader base. We wanted more, but this was the group that we ended up with. The committee had positions represented from parents, principals, individuals from our communications department, community members, NCAE members, finance, technology support, academic services, human resources, exceptional children, testing, assistant principals and principals, folks from our virtual learning academy, We had other school staff. For example, we had one custodian that participated in the committee meetings, and teacher assistants participated. Altogether, we had about 45 representatives throughout the 3 different meetings that participated in the committee. Some of the calendar requirements, just to review so everybody's aware of the stipulations that are in place. First of all is that the number of days have to equate to 185 days, or you have to go to school for at least 1,025 instructional hours. Typically in Gaston County, we work more toward the instructional hour piece. The start date is always the Monday closest to August 26th, and the end date is no later than the Friday closest to June 11th. Teachers and teacher assistants are in school for 215 days. Vacation, there are a minimum of 10 annual leave vacation days that are built into the calendar. You must devise an inclement weather plan that must consist of 7 days in your calendar that inclement weather days can be made up. And holidays are all in accordance to the State Personnel Commission's for State Employees Holiday Guide. Historically in Gaston County and basically throughout the state, when you're building a calendar, the draft calendars, what we try to do is to make sure that both first and second semester are balanced in the number of days so that the instructional hours will be fairly similar. We try to make sure that the holiday breaks are typically in Gaston County. What we try to do is to make sure that there's a 2-week window for the winter break, and then there's at least a 1 week, typically 1 week and 1 day for the spring break. And the winter break, of course, falls around the Christmas time, and the winter break typically falls, the spring break typically falls during the Good Friday and the Easter season. And then we also always include scheduled parent conference dates because we see the need and the importance for our parents to be in our schools to meet with our teachers. One of the most important things that the committee really focused on this year was the academic instructional time. And we want to make sure that our parents have an opportunity to come in and to engage with our teachers so that we can continue to build and establish the relationships that the COVID year kind of took away from us. We want to get our folks back. So there were 4 calendars that we devised as the calendar committee. And at the operations meeting, I shared with the operations folks that I was going to try to get it down to 2 calendars. Well, in attempting to get the calendars down from 4 to 2, there was lots of consensus with the committee that the 2 calendars that they really liked were calendars that both ended first semester after the winter break. And the past 2 years, we've had calendars that ended the first semester prior to the winter break. So therefore, I've submitted 3 draft calendars for you to look at tonight, and that we would like to share as information items and put out on the website for public comment. The first calendar is this sample A calendar, and you can see that the start date for the calendar is a challenge because the start date will be on August 29th, which is the Monday closest to August 26th. And in this first sample A calendar, you can see that there, in the first semester, there is a parent-teacher conference day on October 13th. The winter break begins on December 19th and runs through January 2nd. And then the semester will end in this first calendar on January 23rd. Our high schools typically need a couple of days at the end of the first semester to switch over to get in mode for second semester. And that accounts for schedule changes and the different things that may come up during that time. And then you can see the second semester you have your parent-teacher conference day in March, which would be March 9th. And then the spring break would begin on the 7th of February and run through the 7th of April and run through the 14th of April. And then the last day of school would be June 7th. And in this calendar, there's 1,029 instructional hours. There are 3 early release days, half days in the calendar. The half days are, of course, the 2 parent conference days and the last day of school. There are 10 annual leave days built into the calendar, and of course, you can see the inclement weather makeup plan that we've included there as well. The graduation date would be Saturday, June 10th. And, of course, we've listed the mandated teacher work days that we've included for next year that are mandated for our staff because of some professional development training we plan to utilize. So that's calendar sample A. Sample B is similar to sample A except for the end of the semester dates. Again, you can see the calendar would begin August 29th. The parent-teacher conference date again is the 13th of October. And then the end of the semester would be January 13th. And then, of course, that following week, the Martin Luther King holiday is January 16th, and then a couple of days to flip the schedule, and second semester would begin on January 19th. The end of school on this calendar would be June 7th, and again, the graduation date would be the 10th. In this calendar, there's slightly more instructional hours. There's 1,041 instructional hours in this calendar, so it's slightly more than the first calendar. And basically everything else is pretty close to the same. 85 days during the first semester and 90 days during the second semester in this calendar. And then we have sample calendar D, which is a calendar that ends the first semester prior to winter break. And you can see here the school date is still August 29th is when we would start school. We have the 13th built in as the parent-teacher conference date. We have the semester ending on December 21st, which would give us approximately 77 days during that first semester. Second semester would begin on January 9th, so that would be a little later, so it's a longer winter break in there. And then the second semester, of course, has the days built in March for parent conference, and the last day of school in this calendar would be June 7th, and again, graduation on the 10th. Second semester has a total of 97 days, so the balance is a little different there. So these are the 3 calendars that we have drafted and put together for your review and for information for you as well tonight. What questions?
Yeah, Mr. Devon.
And everybody else, and that's a lot of 77 days versus 97.
You are correct, Mr. Devon. That will be a challenge. Yes, sir.
Okay, any other questions? No, we ain't gonna do. Any other questions, comments? This is just information, but they're definitely looking at your calendar. They're just not.
And Mr. Clinton, thank you for
Mr.
all
Hall.
you do. We know that this is a real tedious job, and nobody's going to be happy with anything, but thank you and your committee for all your hard work.
Mr. Hall, you have a
Were
question?
you able to take back the suggestions of Mr. Davis to the committee?
Yes, sir.
Is that B?
The sample calendar A.
A?
And you'll see the suggestion that Mr. Davis had there, having that, the 24th, I think it's the 23rd and the 24th, or 24th, 25th, being the days, 24th, 25th would be the end of the semester would be the 23rd, 24th, 25th would be the 2 days to flip the calendar.
And they'd be able to get their review in before testing?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Oh,
thank
that's
you.
good.
And at the end of each semester, the final 5 days are the testing days for our high schools.
Yes, Ms. Guthrie.
The Curriculum and Instruction Committee did make those recommendations as well as the operational committee.
Yes, ma'am.
So when will you bring it back for action?
So the next step in this process is I'll work with communications, Mr. Hagens, and we'll put the calendars on the website for public review and comment. And then we'll look at the comments that our stakeholders have. And of course, we'll bring that back and share with you during the January meeting, most likely at the board retreat. We'll talk about some of the changes there that we possibly could make. And then most likely, February is when we would vote for a finalized calendar.
All right, thank you.
Okay? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is a budget update, 2021, 2022. This is the information item. Gary Hoskins.
Good evening, Chairman Ramsey, Vice Chair Cherry, members of the board, Superintendent Booker. I'm here to present a budget update for the current fiscal year. As we've discussed in the past, we currently operate under the recurring budget that the state approved back in 2018, 2019, plus various mini budgets that were approved during the interim. The last couple months, the General Assembly and the governor have been negotiating in private on their two budgets. As you know, the governor came out with his budget, the state and the House came out with their budget, and so they've had a budget committee to negotiate those three budgets. Certain provisions supporting the governor have been included in the conference budget by the General Assembly. However, the governor has not yet agreed to that budget. This conference budget was released this afternoon. It amounted to $25.9 billion and included 600 pages of text. So it's going to take a little bit of time to go through. However, we do know that this budget does provide teachers with a 5% raise over a 2-year period. We do expect the Senate to vote on this budget either Tuesday or Wednesday. Then we expect the House to vote Thursday or Friday, and that this budget will be sent to the governor by the end of this week, early next week. And the governor will then have 10 days to either veto the budget, sign the budget, or not do anything and let it become law after 10 days. So we should have some clarity in the next, by Thanksgiving, hopefully, as to what we'll be doing with the state budget. But that's really all I have right now, Mr. Chairman, unless you have any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Okay. Thank you, Gary.
All right, thank you.
And I thought it would be an appropriate time to introduce our new rep from District 109, North Carolina House, Donnie Loftus. And you can see how important you are to us with the calendars. Just give us free calendar. He wants to speak on it. Good. If you get.
That's exactly why I'm here, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, Board Member, Superintendent. Going to Raleigh, being there 3 weeks is eye-opening. Drinking from a fire hose is done daily. But I haven't forgot where I come from and where my friends are. So I'm excited about being the 109th representative and looking out for Gaston County's interest. Even though I'm in the 109th district, the southeastern part of the county, it's Gaston County. When the 109th does good, the 108 in northeastern Gaston County does good, the 110th Western County does good. I told him tonight on the way up, I said, I'm sure you have all the money you need. He's like, yeah, right. So hopefully we'll move forward with this. When the budget is usually done, they're done between June and August. As you can tell, we're moving into middle of November. And in December, we will start the hearing process for all the state agencies working on the next budget cycle. So we're that far behind. When I first got there 3 weeks ago, we compared it to lobbying back and forth on a tennis court.
Yeah.
And now we're down to a ping pong table. So the negotiations have come very close. The art of negotiate and compromise is prevalent. So everybody will not get everything they want, but hopefully I do know there are some specific things for Gaston County that will be good. I look forward to making sure that Gaston County is fully represented in money for our outstanding school system here in Gastonia. Thank you for giving me a couple of minutes. I appreciate the hard work you do every day for the school system here in Gaston County. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Donnie. Next on the agenda is our consent agenda. There are several items on the consent agenda tonight. Please take a look at these items listed. Do I hear a motion of those items on the
Mr.
consent
Chairman,
agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Moore, a second by Mr. Dedman. Any discussion? All in favor? And that's unanimous. Now we'll turn it over and hear Dr. Booker's report.
Thank you. We've had a long meeting, but there are several things I wanted to highlight. One, I want to thank Mr. Clinton and his team for the work that they are doing, and to let everyone know that we will be having a virtual job fair for teachers on Friday, December 10th from 9 to 1 p.m. And our webpage for Human Resources is a way that prospective employees can register there. And we encourage everyone to spread the word. We are diligently advertising and seeking, and this is another piece of that work. It's exciting in Gaston County that we still have 3 football teams in our playoffs. It reflects the hard work and dedication of the teams. And so East Gaston will be playing at Shelby Friday night, and Forest View will be playing at South Point. So we extend a good luck to those and look for great spirited competitions. Our United Way campaign is going on, and I encourage all of our folks to participate in that because it is part of our community and we are a large part of the community, which gets into really what is neat this time of the year in our schools. Ms. Stevens and I visited a number of schools last week in the food drives that are going on in our schools and the various collection efforts and fundraising. One school we visited had collected 1,800 cans of food out of a elementary school. Visited another elementary school where they were having a competition on the halls, and it's just really great to see how they want to lend a helping hand in these trying times and the caring that goes on and just teaching great values to our students. I will remind everyone that Thanksgiving is next week. If you're like a lot of us, you've been working and it sneaks up on you, but next week is Thanksgiving, which means that November 24th is an optional teacher workday. But through the commitment of this board, you have authorized that the 24th is a remote work day for that. And so thank you again for recognizing and giving that day to our employees. Then on November 25th and November 26th, they are given holidays for students and employees. So there will be no students in school on the 24th. They'll attend school Monday and Tuesday. Our employees have a remote work day on Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday are vacation days. And with that, I would like to say, Mr. Chair, I wish all of our staff a break.
Amen
If ever
on that.
Thanksgiving break was the right discussion point, but also that they get a chance to be with family and remember that's what it's about, and to be thankful that we are fortunate to live in a caring community and that we have many blessings among the challenges that we have. I was in a meeting last night where someone said, I have first world problems. When I look at third world problems, it's really challenging. And so we are blessed in this community, and I thank all of our employees for the work they do to serve our community. And Mr. Chair, that's my comments, but we do need a brief closed session to discuss a couple personnel items.
Okay, before I ask for a question.
I've had a couple of people ask me that have been volunteering in the past and haven't been able to volunteer. Now that we're going to do away with the mask, are they allowed back into schools to volunteer? That's for you, Mr. Booker.
Mr. Dedman, we need to work with our schools and look at the procedures and things because we still want to, as far as contact tracing and exposure.
Oh, I know.
so
I'm just saying,
we'll-
if we're going
we'll
to
manage that.
if we're going to make masks optional, these parents or these grandparents that want to go in and volunteer and help in schools, are they going to be allowed to go into their schools?
We will look at that and get clarification for you.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Dedman. I need a motion to go into closed session. Mr. Collier?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to go into closed session under North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11, paragraph A6 for personnel.
Thank you. Is there any second? Ms. Cherry? All in favor? That's unanimous. We're session, and I'll call on Mr. Debney.
Chairman, I make a motion that we adjourn.
All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank